Welcome to Scigest, your fortnightly serving of digestible science from plant and food research.
Welcome to Scigest. I'm your host, Erin Stroud, and today I am joined by Dr. Satish Kumar. Welcome, Satish.
Hello.
In today's episode, we will be chatting all about the weird and wonderful world of dragon fruit. We'll be covering what dragon fruit is, who's eating it, who's growing it, and why we should care about it. And Satish has a very exciting announcement for us later, towards the end of this episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But before we get started, tell me a little bit more about your role here at Plant and Food Research.
Hi everyone, my name is Satish and I work at Plant and Food as a senior scientist in the VentureFruit building team. And one of my key responsibilities is to develop new approaches to better understand the genetics and genomics of fruit quality. And at the same time, I am also responsible to develop new genomic technologies for the fast breeding of new cultivars.
Oh, very cool. And you're based in Havelock North, aren't you, Satish?
Yes, I am based in sunny Hawke's Bay.
So how long have you been at Plant and Food for?
I've been working at Plant and Food for now maybe 13 years.
And what's your favorite crop to work on?
Over the last 3 decades, I've been in the breeding and genetic space. And I have worked on several plant species like forest trees and fruit trees. And within that fruit tree space, most of my work is on apple. But I also work on dragon fruit, which we will talk about a bit more in later.
Got a special place in your heart for dragon fruit.
Exactly. So that's been the major fruit crop, I guess I would say, over the last decade.
So speaking of dragon fruit, what is dragon fruit? I know it's that weird looking fruit that we sometimes see in our supermarket aisles, but what is it?
Well, it's a beautiful looking tropical fruit, as you say, and generally there are like 2 skin color that you would notice. One of them is red and another is yellow. Yellow is not that common, but we can find some yellow skin fruit as well. And the flesh color differ. We can get white flesh, red flesh, pink and purple. And the fruit texture is somewhat similar to like kiwi fruit. There are lots of tiny seeds in it. And because the fruit has got lots of pointy scales, which makes it look like a dragon, and that's where it got the name from, dragon fruit.
What does it taste like? I've never had one.
Taste might be somewhere in between pear and kiwi fruit.
Oh, okay. And it grows on cactus-like trees, doesn't it? I googled a picture of them before and thought it looked like something out of a Dr. Seuss book.
That's right. The fruit originally belongs to cactus species. Some of them are like climbing cactus. Sometimes you can, like in Viet Nam, we can see tiny plant growing on top of big trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, maybe birds would have eaten the fruit and the droppings would have dropped some seeds and off you go.
It's a very weird and wonderful looking fruit, isn't it?
Indeed, yes.
So is it particularly healthy? Why do we care about dragon fruit?
Well, that's a good question, and I think there are lots of health benefits of eating dragon fruit, and that's partly because A, it's low in calories, but very high in fiber, antioxidants, phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals. But then there are processing aspects where skin can be processed, and that has applications in the food industry and in the pharmaceutical industries as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it can be good for your skin and things as well?
Yes. There are cosmetic products where some of the processing goes into.
Oh, awesome. I mean, we should all be trying to get more fruit and veggies in our diet anyway, and why not put one in that gives you good skin and good health?
Exactly. There are many applications of processed components in the pharmaceutical industry.
Who's buying dragon fruit? What's the market like for dragon fruit at the moment?
Well, at the moment, China is the biggest consumer of dragon fruit, but there are some other Asian countries as well where the consumption is increasing, especially India, Japan, Thailand, Indonesia. Now, outside Asia, the demand is growing in other parts as well, like Europe and US. And because this fruit is like somewhat new, relatively new to those countries, and therefore consumption there largely depend on the marketing. Making people aware of the fruit itself first, and then the health benefits of eating the fruit. So that's where the marketing aspect comes into. And then I guess the demand will also depend on improving the flavor or the eating quality of the fruit as well. But
It is quite a novelty looking item as well, isn't it?
that's really one of the, I guess, the key attractive feature of the fruit. I mean, it's an exotic looking fruit, and people will, when they see it, they would love to taste it and eat it.
Is there a reason that it's popular in Asia? Is it based on the color or?
I think the red color, especially for the Chinese consumers, and the dragon look. So it's seen as like a good luck.
So where is this fruit coming from? I understand that it originally is from the Americas, but that's not where the majority of it is grown.
The center of origin is actually Central and South America, like Ecuador, Mexico. So that's where I get the fruit originates from. However, Vietnam was the first Asian countries where it was introduced by French settlers there a couple of centuries ago. So that's how it came to Asia, and from there on, the production at the moment, like Vietnam is the biggest producer, but other countries are growing some of it as well.
So what's the sort of challenges to growing dragon fruit? Because it's not the easiest thing to grow, is it?
That's right. So at the moment within Asia, the production is very high and the consumption is very high as well. But now what's happening is that the production in China is growing quite rapidly. And what that means is that the Vietnamese exporter, they are finding it more tough to send fruit to China.
Bit of competition.
Yes, indeed. What that means is that there are some challenges. If they want to, find new markets like Europe or US, for example, then the fruit growers need to adopt to new farming practices because they need to meet some technical standards if they want to export fruit to those countries. And therefore, I guess that's the biggest challenge because it involves cost to adopt the new system. So that's the one challenge for the growers. And another challenge there is the disease. I mean, the canker disease particularly is a major threat to the dragon fruit industry in Vietnam. The dragon fruit, being a cactus species, is known for many pests and diseases. And canker disease is relatively new. It was first discovered in Asia around 2009, 2010. And it's a fungal disease. Normally it affects the cladodes or the branches of dragon fruit. And what happens is that generally these are the young shoots when they are growing. They are most susceptible to this canker disease. So the spores that might be sitting there on old branches, they can be splashed around in rain, and that's when all the new growth is affected, and it can really kill the whole plant very quickly. And what happens is that once those spores are sitting on those new growth, and then they can splash upon the fruit as well when the fruit is developing. And once they get onto the fruit skin, that kind of affects the fruit appearance, and that's where it creates problem that the fruit won't look good, and therefore the fruit value will be lower, or it may not be sold at all. So in that way, canker has a really major impact on the production of dragon fruit at the moment. People, have to spray quite a lot fungicides, especially during the rainy season. And what that does is basically creates the risk of residue levels in the fruit. If the residue levels are higher than the maximum limit allowed, then they can't export that fruit to like Europe, to US, or to some other countries.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I think even if, I know there are some farmers who are really good in adopting these new techniques and they're exporting to high value market, but the another technical challenge there is that the current cultivars that are being grown, their flavor profile is somewhat bland.
Okay.
And that's kind of limits their demand in some of those high value market. So that's another challenge that the dragon fruit industry needs to overcome.
I suppose when you've got such a variety of wonderful fruits and vegetables on our shelves, you can't really have a bland tasting fruit be that competitive, can you?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're a grower based in Vietnam, which is where the majority of dragon fruit is or has been grown before, your sort of main challenges are production issues and then the canker. What is Plant and Food doing in that space to help growers in Vietnam?
As I guess some of our listeners would know, Plant and Food, we specialize in temperate fruit crops, not tropical. But the know-how that we have generated over many, many decades, that knowledge can easily be transferred to any fruit crops, basically tropical fruit crops like dragon fruit. So the current collaboration between New Zealand and Vietnam, it all started back in 2013. And initially that project was funded by the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And it was like an aid project. And the program focused on breeding new varieties with good fruit quality, but at the same time the focus of the project was to develop a new production system and new post-harvest technologies as well. So that's where Plant and Food played a bigger role, providing that know-how and training to our collaborators in Vietnam and help develop the new varieties.
And we've had a lot of scientists on the ground as well in Vietnam, haven't we, working out these sort of kinks in the production chain and on the disease.
There were many PFR scientists who helped throughout this program over the last 10 years, right from breeding to production to post-harvest and disease control. And another specialization at Plant and Food is the commercialization of the new products. And that was something completely new concept for our partners. We kind of help them understand how to capitalize on new products, new cultivars when they are developed.
So I guess the outcome of this almost 10-year collaboration between Plant and Food and these partners has resulted in the development of some new varieties, isn't it? Can you tell us more about those? That's very exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, it is exciting. 10 years of hard work. At the end of what I call the first phase of the project, where we started from concept to commercialization, C2C I call it. What we have done over the last 10 years, we developed 3 new red skin cultivars, which have high improved flavor profile. Their flavor is a lot better and their texture is more crisp as well compared to current cultivars that are being grown in Vietnam. In those 3 varieties, one of them is like white flesh, another is a beautiful appealing dark red flesh, and the third one is pink flesh. So there's a whole raft of flesh color, but the skin color of all varieties is red skin.
It's a lot of variety within the varieties.
Yes, indeed. And I guess another important feature or the character of these new varieties is that they are all canker tolerant. So having these new varieties which are good eating fruit and at the same time they are canker tolerant as well. So that's really a good outcome of our 10 years of hard labor.
Oh, I'd say so. So you get the beautiful fruit with all of the different colors of skin and flesh, plus you get a better tasting fruit and it's tolerant to the disease.
Exactly. So we packed lots of features into those new varieties. And I think as far as we know, these are the first canker tolerant varieties to be commercialized anywhere in the world. So they would be quite useful to grow globally wherever we take them.
So how did we breed these new varieties?
As we know, most fruit varieties, their generation interval is long. It takes longer to breed or to develop new cultivars. But we didn't adopt any shortcut or any gene technologies, so we used basically the traditional breeding methods. And the generation interval for different crops is different. So luckily, traditional breeding cycle of dragon fruit is a lot smaller than other fruit crops that we know of, like apple or kiwi fruit. So in case of dragon fruit, the breeding cycle is only about 4 or 5 years.
So who are our partners that we've been working with in Vietnam?
I think we are lucky to have an institute which is called Southern Fruit Research Institute. The short name is SOFRI, and they are based in south of Vietnam. well recognized internationally as well, and within Vietnam as well. So there are the flagship institute, just like Plant and Food in Vietnam, when it comes to breeding and developing of new fruit cultivars.
Yeah, true collaboration when you can learn from each other. That's the cool part as well, isn't it?
Indeed, it's very good collaboration in a way that not much overlap, but good contribution from each party. Yeah.
So what sort of impacts are we expecting these 3 new varieties to have on the dragon fruit market?
I believe that is going to be a real game changer. Several points I would like to make there, because these varieties are like canker tolerant, and if you combine them or grow them with the new production system that we developed in this program, and use the post-harvest technology as well that we have developed, so all that combined will lead to high yield of good quality fruit. And therefore every, player in the value chain, they all will benefit from it. The growers, the processors, pack houses, and the exporter will benefit from it. So it's for the entire dragon fruit industry. And another important point that I haven't mentioned at the moment is these varieties can be stored a lot longer compared to the current cultivars. What that means is that the fruit can be exported to long distance market, like Europe, for example, by sea rather than by air. At the moment, all that fruit goes by air. And because we will be able to store this fruit longer, shipment by sea is quite an option for the exporter. And what that does is, in some way, it will reduce the cost to the consumers. Because that's the one aspect I have heard quite a lot, the cost is costly. And another advantage then would be that the carbon footprint will be smaller. So from that perspective, I think it's a good for consumer. They will be able to see and taste the fruit in the long distance markets that wouldn't have experience eating the fruit. So I think it's a win-win for the industry as well, and as well as for the consumers, given the longer storage potential of these new cultivars. So I would say that the future is looking quite better for the industry.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head when you called it a game changer. It does sound like it's going to shake up the current industry quite a lot. That's awesome. And I guess that's sort of the impact that we're going to see on the market and the business side and the end consumers. But what about when we bring it back to the growers? What sort of impact will this have for the people who are actually out in the fields and working with these plants?
From the grower's perspective, there are quite a number of points I can think of. And the best of all is commercialization aspect of these new varieties, which our partners in Vietnam had not experienced before. We have partnered with a company called VentureFruit for the global commercialization of these 3 varieties. And for some people who don't know VentureFruit, they are part of a bigger group called Turners and Growers, TNG. And they really have a very well established network of growers and distribution worldwide. So we are very, very excited to have such a strong partner in there. And what that will do is we are going to use what we call a controlled production system. And this controlled production system is very similar to some of the well-known fruit cultivars in other crops, like gold kiwi fruit, for example, by Jespri. And in apple space, you have Jazz and Envy. They are commercialized by the same company, TNG. So our commercial partner, they have a very long history, very successful history of commercializing these cultivars in a controlled production manner. And that really help not let these varieties to become a commodity. And therefore, the growers would be able to get a high premium for their crop, because they will be produced and distributed in a controlled manner.
Kind of come up with these new varieties that are going to taste better, they're going to grow better because they're going to get less disease. We're working on this commercialization pathway to make sure that it sells, which is ultimately, all these things are just going to bring more money back into the growers' pockets, isn't it?
True, and I would like to mention here, at the moment, the export earning for the dragon fruit industry in Vietnam is about $1.5 billion US. So it's a big industry, export industry, I mean. And if these new varieties can capture even a small proportion of that industry, even let's say 5%, 10% over the next few years, and that turns into like quite a nice, healthy royalty stream.
Absolutely.
So for growers, yes, I mean, there will be more sustainability, I guess, introduced into these new varieties, so they will be able to, continue growing for a longer time to come. Another advantage for grower is because these varieties are like canker tolerant. So what's happening at the moment is they have to spray lots of fungicides to control canker. And as I said earlier, the risk is that sometimes those residues in the fruit could be higher than they are allowed to export. So that way the growers would be able to have a very high yield of good quality fruit, and at the same time their cost of production will be low because they don't have to spray again and again and again. So the production costs are going to be lower, so that's another benefit for the growers. And at the same time, they won't be contributing lots of chemicals to the environment, so in that way the growers they will have better environmental credentials. They can claim to be more environmental friendly in some way when they will be growing these new varieties.
Well, I can't wait to try them. When can we expect to see these new varieties on our shelves at our local supermarket?
That brings another, I guess, the interesting aspect to it. Although the initial production focus will be in Vietnam, we are testing a pilot study whether we can grow this crop here in New Zealand.
Oh, exciting.
Because it's a tropical crop, and New Zealand climate being temperate, but all this global warming happening everywhere, who knows, maybe in 5-10 years time we might have the suitable climate for this crop. So we are giving it a go. Possibly if everything goes well, in maybe 2-3 years time we might have some fruit produced here in New Zealand. But on the other hand, production of this new cultivar, the commercial production, will start this year, and it normally takes about 2 years for plants to fruit. So I'm expecting that maybe sometime between 2025 the first shipment of fruit should be going out of Vietnam.
So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled then. It's not going to be an immediate entry into our fruit salad.
Indeed.
Well, it sounds like you're at the end of a very successful 9-year project, Satish. Well done.
Oh, thank you, Erin. And I think before I finish off, I would like to thank the many people right across this organization, from the breeding team, the tissue culture, plant protection, molecular biology, the post-harvest and plant protection. So there were so many people who were helped to come to this successful journey, and without their contribution, I don't think we would have been here talking about it today. So
and our 3 new exciting cultivars. How cool.
Yes.
And thank you, Satish, so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure learning more about you and the work that you've been doing.
Great. Thank you, Erin.
And thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more about Satish's work that he's been doing with dragon fruit and the dragon fruit team itself, you can check out our website. And until then, we'll see you in the next one.